When a man becomes predictable, he becomes replaceable. Listen carefully. In courts and kingdoms, I observed a law that no ruler could escape. It was not written in stone, yet it governed men more ruthlessly than any constitution. Predictability weakens power. A prince whose reactions are known in advance becomes easy to manipulate. If his enemies know he will always forgive, they provoke him. If they know he will always rage, they bait him. If they know he will always stay, they never fear losing him. The same law governs a man's presence in any relationship. When a man becomes predictable, he becomes replaceable. Understand what I mean by predictable. I do not speak of reliability and character. Integrity is strength. Discipline is strength. Consistency in values is strength. But emotional predictability, behavioral predictability, desperate availability, these are weaknesses. If your response is always immediate, your approval always guaranteed, your schedule always adjustable, your boundaries always negotiable, then your presence carries no uncertainty. And where there is no uncertainty, there is no tension. Where there is no tension, there is no value. Human beings do not cherish what is certain to remain. Consider scarcity. Gold is precious not because it shines, but because it is rare. If gold lay scattered like gravel on every road, no king would treasure it. So too with attention, so too with validation, so too with you. When a man makes himself endlessly available, he believes he is proving devotion. In truth, he is lowering his market value. He is communicating, without words, that he has nowhere else to direct his energy, no greater mission demanding his focus. And a man without a mission is easily replaced. Predictability also reveals emotional dependency. If she knows you will always forgive, she will test. If she knows you will always stay, she will risk losing you. If she knows you will always chase, she will walk away just to confirm it. But when your reactions are measured, when your attention is earned, not automatic, when your time is structured and not surrendered, you create psychological gravity. Uncertainty commands respect. This does not mean you become chaotic or manipulative. That is the strategy of fools. It means you remain sovereign. Your emotions do not jump at every stimulus. Your plans do not collapse at every invitation. Your standards do not bend at every smile. The man who becomes predictable seeks comfort. The man who remains slightly unpredictable maintains power. In politics, leverage is preserved through controlled ambiguity. In life, presence is preserved through controlled access. When you respond instantly to everything, you signal that nothing else holds your attention. When you reveal your entire emotional landscape at once, you eliminate mystery. When your behavior can be calculated, you can be replaced. But when your focus is divided by ambition, when your time is valuable, when your reactions are deliberate rather than impulsive, you cannot be easily categorized, and what cannot be categorized cannot be dismissed. Remember this: the world replaces what it fully understands and completely controls. If you wish to avoid becoming just another man in a long-forgotten line, do not make yourself common through predictability. Be steady in character, be disciplined in action, but never surrender the subtle power of mystery. For the moment, they know exactly how you will move. They begin preparing for someone else. The hunger for validation. In every court I observed, there were two kinds of rulers: those who commanded respect and those who sought approval. The first were obeyed. The second were tolerated. A man who hungers for validation places himself beneath the judgment of others. He waits for applause before he feels secure. He adjusts his opinions to avoid rejection. He softens his voice to be liked. He negotiates his standards to maintain attention. And in doing so, he surrenders authority. Authority does not come from being admired. It comes from being self-contained. When a man seeks validation, he unconsciously asks a question: am I enough? But the very act of asking reveals that he doubts the answer. People sense this instantly. The man who craves approval laughs too quickly at jokes that do not amuse him. He agrees too often. He over-explains his decisions. He apologizes for boundaries. He tolerates disrespect to avoid discomfort. He believes he is maintaining harmony. In truth, he is advertising dependency. Dependency dissolves power. In politics, a prince who seeks the love of everyone becomes a servant to public opinion. He cannot make difficult decisions. He cannot enforce discipline. He cannot stand alone. His rule becomes fragile because it depends on constant reassurance. So too with a man. If your confidence rises and falls based on someone's mood, you have handed them control over your internal state. If your worth depends on how quickly someone replies, how warmly they respond, how often they praise you, then your authority is not yours. It is leased, and leased authority can be revoked at any time. The hunger for validation also creates overinvestment. A man desperate to be chosen gives too much too soon. He offers loyalty before it is earned. He sacrifices priorities to prove commitment. He floods the other person with attention in hope of securing position. But value is not secured through excess. It is secured through standards. When a man demonstrates that he can walk away, he establishes leverage. When he demonstrates that he needs approval to remain steady, he eliminates it. Understand this clearly. Respect cannot coexist with visible desperation. The moment you fear losing someone more than you fear losing yourself, you have shifted the balance. You become reactive. You begin to strategize for acceptance rather than operate from strength. And people may enjoy your attention, but they will not fear losing it. Authority is quiet. It does not beg. It does not chase applause. It does not collapse when confronted with indifference. The man who does not require validation becomes difficult to manipulate. He can say no. He can endure silence. He can tolerate misunderstanding without panicking. That composure creates gravity. The hunger for validation, however, makes a man predictable. It makes him negotiable. It makes him safe to disregard because he will return regardless. If you wish to preserve authority, you must become internally validated. Know your standards before entering the room. Know your worth before offering your presence. Know your direction before seeking companionship. Because the man who feeds on approval will starve the moment it is withdrawn. And the world does not follow the man who needs to be reassured. It follows the man who reassures himself. Neediness is more fatal than rebellion. A prince who constantly seeks applause from his people ceases to govern. He performs. He adjusts his policies not according to strategy, but according to approval. He fears discontent more than he values strength, and so he becomes weak, not in appearance, but in essence. The same fate awaits any man who hungers for validation. The hunger for validation is subtle. It does not always appear as desperation. Sometimes it disguises itself as kindness, sometimes as generosity, sometimes as emotional openness. But beneath it lies a dangerous confession. My worth depends on your response. The moment a man places his internal stability in the hands of another, he surrenders authority. His mood becomes reactive. His confidence fluctuates with attention. His decisions bend under the weight of external approval. This is not strength. It is dependency dressed as sincerity. When a man seeks validation, he begins negotiating his own standards. He tolerates behavior he would otherwise reject. He explains himself excessively to avoid misunderstanding. He softens his opinions to maintain harmony. He believes he is preserving connection. In truth, he is eroding respect. Authority is not loud, but it is firm. It does not require applause to remain standing. It does not collapse in silence. It does not panic when attention shifts. The validation-seeking man, however, becomes predictable. His compliments become excessive. His responses become immediate. His availability becomes constant, and constant availability signals a lack of alternatives. In every arena of power, whether politics, leadership, or personal dynamics, leverage belongs to the one who needs less. The one who can walk away possesses authority. The one who fears losing approval loses leverage. When you seek validation, you communicate insecurity. When you communicate insecurity, you invite testing. When you invite testing, you place yourself beneath evaluation. And whoever evaluates you stands above you. Consider this carefully. A man who is internally validated does not require constant reassurance. He does not measure his worth by someone else's enthusiasm. He does not chase after fading attention to restore his confidence. He remains steady. That steadiness creates gravity. That gravity creates respect. That respect sustains attraction, loyalty, and influence. But the hunger for validation destroys that gravity. It makes you lighter, emotionally unstable, eager to please, quick to adjust. You become negotiable. You become manageable. And the world does not submit to what it can manage. If you wish to preserve authority, you must cultivate indifference to approval, not cruelty, not coldness, but composure. Approval should be welcomed, never required. Because the moment your sense of self depends on being chosen, admired, or praised, you are no longer sovereign. You are waiting, and power never waits for permission to exist. It belongs to the most contained. There is a difference between presence and noise. Noise demands attention. Presence commands it. The man who reveals everything at once eliminates curiosity. He explains his motives, confesses his fears, exposes his plans, and narrates his emotions without filter. He believes transparency builds connection, but transparency without restraint dissolves intrigue. Mystery is not deception. It is discipline. In politics, a ruler never reveals his full strategy. If he did, his enemies would prepare before he acts. If his thoughts were predictable, his power would be negotiable. The same law governs personal authority. When a man speaks less than he knows, he creates weight in his words. When he moves deliberately instead of impulsively, he creates tension. When he does not react instantly to every emotional stimulus, he creates stability. And stability is rare. Restraint is misunderstood in weak times. It is mistaken for passivity. But true restraint is strength under control. It is the ability to feel deeply without reacting recklessly. It is the capacity to desire without chasing. It is the discipline to walk away rather than plead. Self-control is the highest form of dominance. A man who controls himself cannot be controlled by others. His emotions are not baited easily. His standards are not bent by temporary attraction. His mood is not dictated by attention or silence. Such a man becomes difficult to categorize, and what cannot be categorized cannot be replaced. Why? Because replacement depends on predictability. If someone understands you fully, your triggers, your fears, your patterns, they can substitute you with someone who offers the same behavior. But if you remain layered, measured, sovereign, you resist simplification. Mystery creates imagination. Imagination creates fascination. Fascination creates attachment. Consider the men who are quickly forgotten. They overshare. They overcommit. They overreact. They reveal their entire emotional landscape in the first act. There is nothing left to discover. But the man who unfolds gradually becomes an experience, not an episode. He does not rush to define everything. He allows space. He maintains independence. His life does not orbit another person's presence. His time is structured. His mission remains central. Restraint signals abundance. It communicates that you are not ruled by impulse, that your world is not empty, that your value does not depend on immediate gratification. This does not mean becoming cold or manipulative. Coldness repels. Manipulation collapses eventually. True mystery is quiet confidence. True restraint is emotional governance. True self-control is freedom from desperation. And freedom from desperation is the foundation of irreplaceability. When a man can enjoy without clinging, engage without surrendering himself, care without collapsing into dependency, he becomes rare. And rarity, in any kingdom, is protected. Remember this. The world does not struggle to replace what is easy to understand and easy to access. It hesitates before replacing what feels scarce, composed, and sovereign. Master yourself, and you will never need to demand significance. It will be felt, not apathy, not coldness, but freedom from needing a specific result. In every arena of power I observed, whether in diplomacy, warfare, or private ambition, the man who needed victory the most was the easiest to defeat. Why? Because necessity breeds desperation, and desperation breeds mistakes. When a man becomes emotionally dependent on a particular outcome, whether it is approval, affection, recognition, or control, he begins to operate from fear, fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of insignificance. And fear makes a man negotiable. Consider the prince who must win the love of his people at any cost. He avoids difficult decisions. He hesitates to enforce discipline. He compromises authority to preserve admiration. In trying to secure loyalty, he weakens his throne. The same pattern governs the individual man. When you must be chosen, your behavior shifts. When you must be liked, your standards soften. When you must secure attention, your composure cracks. But the man who can walk away from any outcome, calmly, without emotional collapse, possesses a terrifying advantage. He cannot be coerced. Indifference to outcome creates stability. It signals that your identity is not dependent on external validation. It communicates that your life remains full and structured regardless of who stays or leaves. This is the foundation of irreplaceability. People test those who appear afraid to lose them. They push boundaries. They delay responses. They observe reactions. They measure emotional dependence. If you react strongly, you reveal attachment. If you panic, you reveal insecurity. If you overcorrect, you reveal fear. But if you remain composed, not indifferent to the person, but indifferent to the outcome, you create psychological gravity. Because now the balance shifts. The one who fears loss least controls the interaction. This principle is not cruelty, it is sovereignty. You may desire connection, you may enjoy companionship, you may value presence, but your internal structure must not collapse without it. Your mission must remain intact. Your routine must remain disciplined. Your self-respect must remain non-negotiable. Indifference to outcome also prevents overinvestment. Many men give excessively at the beginning, attempting to secure permanence prematurely. They offer time, energy, loyalty, and emotional exposure before understanding whether the investment is reciprocated. This imbalance creates vulnerability. But when you are detached from outcome, you observe first. You assess. You measure consistency. You respond proportionally. You invest gradually. Such control signals maturity. It says, I am here by choice, not by need. And choice carries weight. The man who needs nothing becomes powerful because he cannot be threatened with removal. The man who stands firm regardless of response becomes magnetic because his presence is voluntary, not dependent. Understand this clearly. Attachment without self-control creates weakness. Desire without discipline creates chaos. Hope without independence creates fragility. But when a man operates from abundance, emotionally, mentally, structurally, he does not cling to results. He acts, he observes, he adjusts, and if the outcome does not serve him, he withdraws without spectacle. That quiet willingness to walk away is the highest form of power. Because the world does not chase the man who chases it. It watches the man who can turn his back and remain unmoved.